Thank you and good afternoon. Despite being called the president, I cannot be the president of the Nehru Memorial Library and Museum and Library because the Prime Minister of India is the president. I'm just the director of the Museum and Library, but it feels good to be called the president, as long as my boss doesn't hear it. It's a lovely session. We have 5 great panelists. When I saw the topic, I would have preferred the word credibility to legitimacy in that sense. And I think this is the first time that I'm seeing the word hegemony being used in terms of state building. Monopoly of power, monopoly of violence, but hegemony is an interesting thing. I'm sure our 5 panelists will do justice to that. Any society in turmoil, any society in conflict, always desires, looks for stability. And in our minds, most of our minds, the word stability and the word a strong center, the center holds, is always very strongly linked. There is obviously a certain logic to it, but I think very often we miss the context. And that can be tragic actually if we miss the context. The Latin American countries followed the American model of governance, which you have also. And Guillermo O'Donnell, this political scientist, had done a lovely study showing how in Latin America the system can only fail. When you have such rigid economic interests which control a Congress and you have directly elected presidency, you are in for trouble. In very short. It's a very long piece. I'm reducing it to 3 lines only. In the Indian context, we started very differently. We had about 12 states, 12 provinces in 1949-50, once the princely states were absorbed. Today we have 30 states in India. We've gone from 12 to 30. It's a long trajectory of this happening. Basically, it is the state's response to strong political upsurges on grounds of initially language, linguistic states, on grounds of ethnicity, and lately on grounds of economic development even. Political journeys, if you look at any large country, and Afghanistan is a large country, let's remember that. Let's not just look at the population, but look at its length, spread, its geography, etc. Any big country over a period of hundreds of years after it adopts certain systems changes a lot. In the 1920s, the US president could go on a holiday to New England with 2 secretaries, and that was the White House. Today, I think the executive wing runs into thousands and thousands of people. Center becomes powerful in some ways it changes. India itself, we've seen massive yo-yo movement between the center becoming stronger, and then lately, politically, when political hegemony becomes weaker, power gets dispersed in the system. Economically, central planning collapses, the market economy takes over, the central government no more controls resources, and then legal changes happen, and things do make changes in it. So there's nothing fixed for a particular time. But the moment we absorb and take in words and concepts which are not natural to us, which are alien to us, and do not accommodate them to suit our local context, we do have problems in this. At the end of the day, stability arises out of a sense of participation. Service delivery for the state is important, but service delivery does not equal the state. State's legitimacy ultimately comes from a feeling of identification, imagined or otherwise, and we have reference to that earlier on. Sense of participation and involvement comes from the fact that a sense of agency is there among the citizens. So therefore you need very good sense of elections, a very good identity between the voter and the voted. The elector must be accountable in whichever form of government you have. Accountability also comes from rotation. Monopoly of power is a bad idea anywhere. And the more levels of government you are, the ability to absorb in people without displacing. You don't want to replace one elite with another elite. You want to widen the elite in that sense, to allow people to absorb into the system at different levels. And that ultimately is state building, which a society has to do on its own. Has to through its own experience, provided external actors are willing to let it do. Let me not stand between you and our panelists. We'll all be speaking for about 13 minutes or so. Our first speaker, and I'm going to follow whatever Daud you've given me. And before that, yes, Daud, thank you very much for bringing us to this beautiful city. Herat being, it is in my mind, the headquarters, the capital of Khorasan, and what we now think of Farsi culture, to my mind, it arises from out of Herat. It feels great to be in this arg, from Alexander to Timur to now. So Dr. Mujib Rahimi, scholar, spokesperson of the Afghan Chief Executive Officer, Chief Executive rather, sort officer, Afghan Chief Executive. Over to you. Your choice. At the 12th minute.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Respected delegates, representatives, scholars, researchers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to 6th round of Herat Security Dialogue. Let me begin by thanking the Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies and my dear friend Dr. Daud Muradian for organizing this important and colorful scholarly gathering. I think the majority of the audience here speak Farsi, and it would be easy for me if I switch to Farsi, and if I need it, I might come back to English. در 12 دقیقه وقت دادن واقعا سخت است و دشوار است که در مورد دولت سازی در افغانستان و همچنان بحث مشروعیت، ظرفیت و سلطه‌جویی صحبت شد. من در 12 دقیقه که دارم رؤوس مطالبی را که قرار است در موردش صحبت بکنم خدمت شما به عرض میرسانم. بعدم در بخش پرسش و پاسخ اگر سوالی بود در خدمت شما هستم. در قدم اول بسیار کوتاه در مورد تاریخچه دولت در افغانستان، ظهور دولت، بحران و مشروعیت دولت و تحولاتی که داشته اشاره میکنم. در بخش دوم اشاره کوتاهی به دولت سازی در مرحله بعد از تحولات بن و در پایان هم چالش ها و مشکلاتی را که ما در عرصه مشروعیت و دولت سازی در شکلگیری حکومت وحدتی ملی به او روبرو هستیم. من دکترای ما در بخش ظهور دولت در افغانستان، مشروعیت دولت و بحران دولت گرفتیم. عنوان انگلیسی دکترا هم بود که an accounting for the Afghan state, its emergence, logics and crisis. معلومات که جمع شد بالاخره در آخر به این نتیجه رسیدیم که از یک دکترا موادی که جمع شده بیشتر است. به او اساس فقط بخش اولش که شکلگیری دولت بود در قالب این کتاب چاپ شده در ماه آگوست. State Formation in Afghanistan, a Theoretical and Political History, is published by IB Theories in London and New York. I have only 2 copies. No one should ask me for a copy, and it's available in Amazon and other international websites selling books on Afghanistan. The name I had chosen for this book was Deconstructing the Official Discourse of State Formation in Afghanistan. But the publisher somehow they reckoned that that name was not good for selling the book, and instead they have chosen State Formation in Afghanistan. In this book I have used the discourse theory combined with state debate and also post-colonial studies. Here, in my thesis, if I can summarize it, we know that there are 2 sorts of captivities. One is that someone is putting you in jail physically, and a second sort of captivity would be ideological captivity or a spectacle. And we, in discourse theory, we believe that it is anti-foundational. We think that the entire debate and conflict is based on discourses, and humans are exposed to discourses, and these discourses are fundamentally related to power. It is power that creates discourse and shapes our understanding and perception of ourselves in the other. So based on this discourse theory, my research on the emergence of the state in Afghanistan mainly focuses on the narrative. The government and the power teaches us in Afghanistan how the state emerged in this country, developed and reached a level of sophistication. In my research, I use this method developed by Derrida, which is called double reading. In the first move, I try to reconstruct very faithfully the official narrative of state formation in Afghanistan. And if I go to the details of that, it would be very hard. So first, I reconstruct the narrative. I mainly rely on first-hand resources or literature available in Farsi, Pashto, and English. Then in the second move, I try to problematize and deconstruct this official narrative, destabilize the picture the state has formed. So the book consists of 6 chapters, a theoretical framework, and followed by reconstructing the official discourse of state formation in Afghanistan from 1880 to 2010, and followed by the deconstruction move. I refer to historiographies, treaties, cartographies, atlases, problematizing the official discourse of state formation in Afghanistan. Then I move to the era, which I name it dislocation, diversification, and decolonization of the official discourse of state formation in Afghanistan in the last 10 years. And in the last chapter, I focus transforming radical antagonism to plural agonism. My finding is that the narrative the power provides for us in Afghanistan is very exclusionary and it's biased, and for us, in order to have a new understanding of ourselves within Afghanistan and also in the region, we need to rewrite and provide for a more plural and inclusive narrative. And I hope colleagues, if in the question and answer part, I would be ready to provide more details on the part of state formation. And the second part I wanted to focus. We know all the story of how the state formation took shape in Afghanistan after the Bonn Agreement. I have another book which is called The Impact of Constitutional Choice on Democratic Consolidation and Divided Societies. And as an example, I have mainly focused on Afghanistan. My finding there in argument is that the system we have chosen in Afghanistan is based on US model, exclusive presidential system, which is not fit for a post-conflict, diverse and divided society in Afghanistan, with the elimination of the position of prime minister, which we had it under the monarchy and the presidential system or semi-presidential system we had in Afghanistan. And I argue for a constitutional design in order to maximize the number of winners, political inclusivity, and also a parliamentary system to consolidate the democratic process and at the same time provide more spaces for representation. In the last bit, which I think I'm crossing my time limit, the most eminent problem for the legitimacy currently we are facing in Afghanistan is the issue of reforms, especially the electoral reform and the constitutional reform. We had an election in 2014. We ended up in a deadlock, literally moving to a crisis, but the outcome was, after a long terms or rounds of negotiations with international support and intervention, the Kabul political agreement. Based on that political agreement, the government of national unity was formed, and there is an agenda for reform. And the top of that agenda, despite many other problems we have, security, fighting corruption, delivering services, is the electoral reform. It is a main challenge. and also a constitutional reform, distribution of electronic IDs. And based on my perception, there were two camps based on that discourse theory. There is a dislocation in the last as the result of the 30 or 40 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And there is, as a result of that dislocation, we have diversification in a move for recognition of pluralism and a futuristic vision based on citizen rights and a civic-based government. And on the other side, there is a camp which argues that the rupture in the dislocation was an exception which disrupted the normal governance in Afghanistan in the normal norm. So they're trying to return to the past by securing this rupture and taking us back to the past. And they are presenting the monarchy under Zahir Shah as a golden era of stability, peace in Afghanistan. So the first camp is arguing for decentralization, more a pluralist society based on more inclusivity. The second camp is arguing for more centralized government and at the same time reviving the past history of Afghanistan. I think the next election would be fought mainly between these two camps, and those were the summaries I managed to present in the time space I had. Thank you very much.
As long as it's clear what it is doing, we are in for good times. I would now request Dr. Timur Sharan. He is the Deputy Minister at the Afghanistan Independent Directorate of Local Governance, an institution I saw coming up 2007, 2007, right? I remember when the order was issued and was set up. I'm glad to see you here. Over to you.
Salam Adurut. And let me begin by thanking the Institute for this successful conference and at this magnificent place. Let me provide a different lens, a different framework to understand governance and the issue of legitimacy and political stability in Afghanistan, both historically and presently. Dr. Rahimi talked in detail about discursive aspects of state formation in Afghanistan. What I would like to do is talk more in terms of the practical aspect of the state formation and recently the state building process. I argue that the foundation of the Afghan state, if we take with the arrival of Ahmad Shah Durrani, with the emergence of the Afghan state as a network kingdom. And essentially what we have in Afghanistan is a network state. The foundation that the Ahmad Shah Durrani and the successive coalition of tribes and ethnicities along stretching beyond within the current Afghan territory and beyond that was essentially a network of expansion, exploitation, and expansion to India and other places. With that foundation throughout our history, what we have is the transformation of the transformation of political networks and contentions within these diverse and competing political networks has shaped the Afghan state formation. Whether it was contestation along different clans with different coalitions with different tribes and ethnicities in Afghanistan, or this was along an ideological mapping during the 1970s and 80s in Afghanistan. And in the 1990s, as the civil war and the role of the jihadi political military networks, known as tanzims, came to power, again that shaped the process of state formation. Now, I'm not going to discuss in detail those aspects of state formation, but to come to discuss the post-2001 Afghanistan. And the foundation of the network state was essentially built after post-Bonn conference, where competing former jihadi networks came to occupy a strategic part of the Afghan state, both the military, the bureaucracy, and so forth. And what we are now seeing, a contestation between Western allied political elites who have come from the West in contestation with the former jihadis who used to be in power, but predominantly now see themselves excluded. In another word, what we have failed magnificently is nation building. But what we have achieved beautifully is network building over the control of the Afghan state and different parts of it. So what we need to do, and this is the framework that I'm proposing here, for us to understand governance in Afghanistan and the issue of legitimacy, we must theorize the relationship between political network forms of organizations, as I call it, political networks, and the formation of the state, the Afghan state. Now, how I define political networks? Political networks are defined as a distinct hybrid hierarchical structure whose members share power and resources through informal and constantly renegotiated deals and pacts. In moments of contestation like the 2009-2014 elections, what we saw, the emergence of a coalition of different networks, what I call them whole networks. And right now what we are seeing is different deals being made among different political networks, what I call them individual networks, who have got their own resources and various sources of informal legitimacy. They come together, they are dependent on each other for the resources that they control, whether this is in the mining industry or in the economic, different economic industries in Afghanistan, or they're able to brilliantly manipulate identities as a form of constituency mobilization. But for a political network, an individual political network to be successful, it has to have two things. So, qawaid bazi, the rules of the games, are three main practices that the political networks have been able to successfully establish in post-2001 Afghanistan. The first is an expansive patron-client relationship. یک سیستم ارباب رعیتی. دوم, second, the ability to control different parts of the economy through rent seeking and illegality, whether it's the mining industry, the contracts with the Afghan state, and so forth. And finally, the ability to mobilize the constituency through politicizing identities, not only ethnic identities, tribal identities, regional identities, clan identities, family identities, and so forth. And a political network has been successful because it has been able to do at least two of those. Those political networks that only did one, they were gradually weakened. Now, what has essentially established in post-2001 Afghanistan, as I argued, is a network state. And in that network state, the power dynamics of political networks and the established institutional rules that I mentioned have interlocked them into a complex system of resource and power interdependencies. What we are seeing in post-2014 election is that, and to some extent President Ghani is doing, is breaking some of those interdependencies. And that is stretching the boundaries of the state, the tensions among different networks, and weakening some of those. So at the moment we're hearing a lot of noise about the emergence of various different whole networks coming together and forming coalitions. From my point of view, it is the desperation among these political networks and within these whole networks as a whole that is pushing them desperately to manipulate identities along ethnic mainly during elections and along other forms of identities. So that's the framework that we need to understand Afghanistan. And that is the challenge of state formation in Afghanistan. That is the central, fundamental issue that the Durrani Kingdom got it, built the foundation wrong, and subsequently through different regimes we have inherited along those rules, informal institutional rules that I talked about. To conclude, different elites or political networks as part of these elites have captured the Afghan state. And they are sustaining themselves through rent-seeking, illegality, corruption, and the ability to manipulate Afghanistan's identities. And that is essentially the network state. And if I may take 1 or 2 minutes to talk about, this is the framework that I developed as part of my PhD work, but what I didn't do, and now that I'm working for the Afghan government and I have access to an enormous amount of information, is to link the national networks and the local networks. And more importantly, to understand how the national and local, whether it is in Herat or Mazar or Nangarhar, different players like Haji Zahir, Ismail Khan, Dostum and others are manipulating, and how that power contestation between the national and the local is shaping state building in Afghanistan. How that is shaping insurgency and our ability to win against resurgent insurgency in Afghanistan. How that is shaping our economy and so forth. And I would end there. I'm happy to discuss some of the reforms that is being carried out in terms of addressing some of these problems, especially the dynamics between the national and the local, and these linkages that exist at the moment between Kabul and the periphery in Herat and Nangarhar. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there were lots of food for thought, COM is obviously, network is obviously a very strong concept. And I think the trick of democracies ultimately is how do you convert informal networks based on selfish rent-seeking activities into larger political identities which are based around ideas. And that is a difficult journey to perform. Next speaker is a very dear friend from a long time, Kaun. Dr. Kaffer has a Juris Doctorate from the United States, runs the law firm Kakar Advocates, does a lot of involvement in public policy for a long time. And for the next 12 minutes, he's going to tell us his vision. Over to you, Kaun. Your choice. As I said, as long as it's 12 minutes, I don't care where you speak from.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm also very grateful for the Afghan Institute of Strategic Cities, and specifically to Dr. Muradian and his colleagues for organizing, as usual, this very august conference. So I'll jump right into the issues. 13 years after the adoption of the current Afghan constitution in 2004, perhaps it's appropriate to assess its effectiveness and how the country has fared under its system. Specifically, whether the executive branch is suited to meet the needs of the country. That question is discussed in detail in a paper that I've co-authored with my two colleagues, Thomas Kramer and Humayun Raufi, and which is published by US ARU and with the support of USIP. I think you can certainly get them on their websites, but I also have some copies here. The research paper first reviews the role of the executive branch under classic forms of government, including the parliamentary, dual or mixed, and presidential system, and the variations that they present. It also provides a history of the Afghan constitutions, starting with the first one in 1923, right after the Declaration of Independence in 1919. The paper also analyzes how and why Afghanistan adopted its current constitution, and how that model has served the country, assessing its effectiveness with particular focus on the national unity government, and make recommendations for the steps forward. Well, now please rest assured, I'm not going to discuss all of those here. Certainly I cannot do them in the 12 minutes. So I'll just touch upon the key aspects of this paper and on perhaps focus more on the recommendations on the way forward. Just quickly, the research was based on kind of desks research and looking at the various commentaries on the current constitution, some certainly done by Dr. Muradian and his colleagues, and looking at the various Afghan constitution, and also importantly interviewing over a dozen Afghan political actors and constitutional and legal experts. Well, most constitutions rely on a concept of separation of power to prevent the concentration of political power in the hands of few and thereby promote democracy. A critical component of any democratic form is the executive branch. I think we all agree. But it takes various forms based on the agreement of the political classes, the people, and the needs of the country. The current constitution of Afghanistan, as was said, was ratified in 2004. The ratification process, which took place with significant international assistance, resulted in the adoption of an executive branch with authority concentrated in a directly elected president with broad powers. This type of government was deemed more suitable than other structures or options, among other reasons due to Afghanistan's status as a post-conflict country, relatively short history of democratic governance, and perhaps most importantly because of the absence of strong political parties. Now, there are no set criteria to actually evaluate executive branch and assess them. And I'm here grateful for the very in-depth conversation that, again, I had with Dr. Muradian, and he suggested some criteria, which I think proved to be quite useful. And they are, the executive branch should be assessed looking at different criteria: legitimacy, flexibility, accountability, effectiveness, and stability. These seem important. I mean, the government must be perceived legitimate both by the people and the outside world, with a legal basis, perhaps through election of the people, and dedicated to the public good and not just for its own ends. The government must be able to adapt and adjust to challenging circumstances. That is, it must have flexibility. If an executive structure is too rigid, the government may not be able to move quickly and decisively in times of crisis. It's also imperative that the government, especially the executive branch, be accountable to the people and to other branches, specifically to the legislative branches. And in order to be effective, the government must be able not only to set policy, but also implement them, enforce the laws, and serve the people. And finally, the government subject to being second-guessed or even dissolved at every turn, lack the fortitude to push through reforms and controversial policies. In other words, the governments must have stability, and this is very critical for a post-conflict country. Now, assessing the current system during the past 13 years will probably take me a long time, and I invite you to read the report for that. So what I'll go forward is basically on the recommendations, and I think you'll get an idea of how we perhaps see the past 13 years as well. I mean, with the above mentioned criteria in mind, many constitutional experts believe that the parliamentary system, which rely on consensus building, work best when a country has strong, organized political parties. I think that's universally recognized. And Afghanistan lacks that. In Afghanistan, political parties exist, but the system is not mature. Given the chaotic nature of the political party system in Afghanistan and the challenges of nation building after years of war, almost all constitutional experts and political actors opine that a parliamentary system is ill-suited to the country's present needs. Such a system requires either strong parties or multiple parties willing to work together to build coalitions, which for practical reasons are currently absent in Afghanistan. I'll give an example. Since World War II in Italy, which has a parliamentary system but not very strong national political parties, they've had 62 governments. Now, and the number of elections, I haven't even counted them. So for a country like Afghanistan, when basically you have a parliamentary system and every time if coalitions are built but then they fall apart and you have to, the government falls, the consequences will be catastrophic. The issue will not just remain in the parliament, it will spill in the streets. So a parliamentary system remains an aspiration. Perhaps it is something that we can all aspire for. But there are sometimes called for it among political elites, but it does not seem to be a viable option for Afghanistan at this time. Some have argued that a mixed or a dual system perhaps could be more suitable for, among other reasons, greater representation, ethnic balance. But perhaps even that will have significant risks for effectiveness and stability in the system. The most well-known model of a dual system is the French, but that seems to be applicable in a very developed democracy. We must keep in mind that a critical for its relative success is that often the president and the prime minister come from the same political party. There's agreement among experts that in 1986, when they were from rival parties, a period called as cohabitation, the French system did not do well. We have a diplomat here, but this is a detailed discussion. Therefore, they had early elections to actually correct that. So the mixed system of president and prime minister poses even additional challenges where the authorities of each office would need to be continuously negotiated and determined, and could drastically slow down or weaken the executive in the face of major challenges. In fact, the dual system could easily break down in the absence of strong legal foundation, precedents that guide the leaders, and would have a clear arbitrator in case of inevitable disputes over powers, all of which unfortunately in Afghanistan are either absent or very weak. Just quickly, I'll give you an example. We have some esteemed members of parliament and government. There's even some dispute over who has the right to interpret the Constitution. Even that is not settled. In other words, the final arbitrator, as once again I'm reminded, I'm not trying to please Dr. Muradian for no reason, but he has given me some very good sentences. He said once that Afghanistan's system lacks John Kerry. Who is the John Kerry of Afghanistan system? For those who may need the background, who can basically make the last call? We have dispute over or different opinions among parliamentarians, parliament as a whole and the government, as to perhaps who has the authority to interpret the Constitution. So when you don't have the arbitrator as well, and then you have disputes between the different parties, you could be easily entering constitutional crisis. So that leaves us with the presidential system. The result of this study, in the views of most experts reviewed, consistent with the assessment that an improved presidential system is the most appropriate way to go forward. There's a recognition that the current system needs to be modified, bearing in mind its successes and failures in application over the last decade. A government headed by a single executive with broad authorities views as best option However, in a multi-ethnic country such as Afghanistan, the president and his team of vice presidents, or if you have additional vice presidents and so forth, would need to receive votes and support from across ethnic groups in order to ensure legitimacy and stability. Another key area of, in fact, the focus of reform should be strengthening local governance, which is, and that is phased and careful delegation of some authorities of the presidency and strengthening of other institutions, both at the center and in the provinces, would reinforce democracy in the country. Our research suggests that under the current system, the president may get involved in both major national issues and perhaps minor issues in Kabul or in the provinces. This has to change. There's a concern that regarding too much centralization in decision-making and weaknesses in administrative paralysis at the lower level of the government. That needs to change. The efficiency of the system would most likely improve the decision-making processes if they were streamlined and if other institutions, both at the center and provinces, were empowered. Let me give you some examples. For example, the Civil Service Commission, we advocate that its place should be in the Constitution so that its authority is heightened, and that it becomes more non-political and more neutral and effective. Similarly, the anti-corruption efforts and bodies, they should be constitutionally mandated with, again, to reduce political influence on them, both from the government and from the parliament, so that they can do their efforts more independently and effectively. And so these are some of the things we can do in Kabul, but also in the provinces. Actually more authority should be given to the provinces, to the new leaders in the provinces and under them. So, and certainly to strengthen stability, the language of the Constitution granting authority of the Constitution, constitutional interpretation to the Supreme Court should be unambiguous, which it currently is not, or in keeping with modern and international constitutional practices, the authority to interpret the Constitution should be vested in a newly created constitutional court. As a general rule, the concept of separation works best when there are clear majorities and opposition parties operating within the political system. Accountability suffers when the political landscape is dotted with dozens of small groups and self-interested individuals. Establishing an environment where legitimate political parties can flourish and candidates can freely declare party affiliation will enhance the political process and expand the country's executive options. Last page. We have a 2 minutes. I'm sorry, just last minute. I mean, to bring the above, well, I'll come to the one key concept here. To bring the above mentioned reforms for enhanced legitimacy, effectiveness, and stability of the presidential system would require the convening of the constitutional law jirga. Let's not underestimate the difficulties of these processes. I think the National Unity Government, for example, has signed a document where they have committed to a lot of reform measures, from elections, constitution, even amendments to the Constitution and so forth, but unfortunately the results have not been very clear. And it's not perhaps for the lack of intention or willingness, but there are really difficult challenges of doing those things. Just to give you an example, to change the Constitution, you need to convene a constitutional law jirga. And who makes up the constitutional law jirga? Members of the National Assembly and the heads of provincial and district councils. Number one, the current members of the National Assembly have had their terms extended by presidential decrees. Serious questions about their legitimacy, frankly. Number two, we have not had district council elections, so their heads are not even present. So we cannot convene a constitutional law jirga. So therefore, I mean, the changes will take some time. So first, we've got to have the election as soon as possible. The government has to have those elections as soon as possible. And number two, there's even a concern that if the constitutional law is convened, that it perhaps could focus on a lot more identity and language and other issues, leaving aside the very key issues of the government. So in our suggestion is that actually the first two chapters of the Constitution should be left alone to concentrate on the executive branch and of course on the legislative branch as well. We also argue that the secret voting by members of parliament is completely contrary to any democratic tradition. Members of parliament are our representatives. They must tell us how do they vote on key issues. Secret voting leads to corruption, backdoor dealing, and other issues. So they are accountable to us, and they must let us know how they vote. So there should be mechanism for accountability in the system as well. Anyway, in conclusion, after 13 years in a post-conflict country, I think it's not uncommon to say that we must review the Constitution. In fact, even in the Constitution, it was going to be put in there. So it's not uncommon. I think the question is how much we want to change it. A complete overhaul or some reforms. We, based on our discussion and research, advocate a reform. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Kakar. I think you made a very good point. Don't underestimate the difficulties of reform. It's always easy to talk about it, but obviously time-bound reforms. Our next speaker has flown 15,000 miles, 11 time zones.
Inviting me and making my participation at this important conference possible. And I'd like to start with a disclaimer that what I'm going to talk about is research I've been conducting over the last 12 years. Actually, it started right after the first presidential election in 2004. And these are my own remarks. They don't represent any government institution, or even my university. I want to talk about two critically important structural problems associated with the Afghanistan electoral system that partially, but significantly, I believe, inhibit a true Afghan democracy, as well as an effective and efficient Walsi Jirga. These two dynamics are ethno-linguistic voting patterns and the single non-transferable vote. My comments will be based not on philosophy, not on theories, but on empirical evidence, statistical analyses I've been doing, and most of these analyses I've published over the last few years. And that's important to understand. So let me first address ethno-linguistic voting patterns. Each Afghan election since 2004 has been dominated by ethno-linguistic block voting. In other words, Pashtuns vote for Pashtuns, Tajiks vote for Tajiks, Hazaras vote for Hazaras, Uzbeks vote for Uzbeks, and so forth. During the first Afghan presidential election on October 9th, 2004, Hamid Karzai garnered 55.4% of the vote, while his main opponents, Yunus Kanuni, Haji Muhammad Mahakik, Abdul Rashid Dostum, received respectively 16.3, 11.7, and 10% of the vote. The important question to me concerning this election, however, is what did this election mean for the development of democracy in Afghanistan? If you assess the voting patterns like I have at the provincial level by the votes received by each of the presidential candidates, extremely interesting patterns emerge. The data clearly suggest the results of the initial Afghan presidential election merely reflected reified traditional ethnic splits in the country. This result is based on correlational analysis of the provincial election data for each of the four leading candidates, who all happen to be from different ethno-linguistic groups, so it helped my research, for the 34 Afghan provinces relative to the ethnic breakdown or composition. Now think of a correlation, for those of you that don't know statistics, it's just the relationship between two variables. A perfect relationship between two variables is a positive 1. A perfect negative correlation is a negative 1. So I'll give you some of these statistics in the next few minutes. The results of my analysis are very telling. The analysis clearly supports the notions that the results of the initial Afghan presidential election represented and reflected historical ethnic patterns that have long driven conflict dynamics in the country. No candidate received support, significant support, outside of their particular ethno-linguistic group. My assessments clearly suggest that each ethnic group, like I said before, voted for an explicit candidate from their own ethnic group, with correlations of ethnic parochial voting ranging from 0.85 to 0.91. These are statistics that you just don't see in political science research. I mean, the patterns are so clear. And these results are very statistically significant. They couldn't happen by chance in 1 in 10,000 times. While such analysis does not imply causation, it does suggest clearly that traditional ethnicity remains at the forefront of Afghan politics, at least represented by recent presidential voting patterns. And this is not good for the development, in my opinion, of a viable representative democracy. Another interesting finding of vital importance of ethnicity in Afghan politics and governance is the high positive correlation between different ethnic groups with the respective candidates, but also voting against other candidates. I found strong relationships that Tajiks voted against Karzai, Pashtuns voted against Kanuni, and this was actually quite surprising to me. The chance of a Pashtun voting for any other candidate is extremely slight and reflects solidarity in their voting patterns. This likewise was found with the Tajiks. They had a very slim chance of voting for a Pashtun. These results suggest the two most influential ethno-linguistic groups, and in some regards, traditional rivals have not only voted for their own candidate, but also significantly against the other ethno-linguistic candidate. This does not represent an encouraging finding for the success of a strong presidential system based on the primacy of one ethnic group in deference to others. In fact, it's been argued that a strong presidential system can be a recipe for disasters in countries such as Afghanistan, where political elites are deeply divided. A pure presidential system effectively permits only one winner while potentially generating many disgruntled losers. The second presidential election of 2009 showed remarkably similar voting patterns. My analysis of the 2009 election suggested that each of the leading candidates from a particular ethno-linguistic group received the bulk of votes from provinces in which the majority of their same ethnic group resided, with correlations ranging from 0.53 to 0.80. These results, again, were highly statistically significant, suggesting they could not have occurred randomly. There are structural things happening underneath that are causing this in Afghan elections. As I suggested, causation is not determined by my results, but clearly there are some problematic structure in Afghan elections. Also, I analyzed the Walsi-Jirga elections of 2005 and 2010. The Walsi-Jirga election of 2005, the winning candidate's ethnicity percentage to the population ethnicity percentages were very strong in individual provinces. These results, again, suggest, as we saw in the presidential elections, and demonstrated a strong and significant correlation between the candidate's ethnic affiliation and the ethnic affiliation of the provincial population as a whole. This analysis clearly indicates that Walsi-Jirga candidates were elected by their own ethnic population. An examination of the 2010 Walsi-Jirga election also shows these same results. We found relative to the presidential elections of 2004 and 2009 and the legislative election of 2005. again demonstrating strong and statistically significant voting patterns based on ethno-linguistic factors. The analysis of the Walsi-Jirga as well as the presidential elections suggests unequivocally that Afghans vote according to their ethnicity. These analyses also suggest that Afghanistan faces an extremely difficult challenge of unifying a fragmented society and fostering the development of a national identity because each ethnic group is attempting to gain a foothold in government, sometimes at the expense of other groups. Since this attempt at entering government is taken from an ethnic approach rather than a regional or national one, the fragmentation of society will continue until either one dominant ethnic group controls all of government power or ethnic politics will make way for increased internal conflict. As the analysis that I've talked about bear out, elections appear to be more procedural than substantive. The results of these analyses do not bear out that the presidential election went far at all in terms of uniting a divided country behind a single candidate. Rather, Afghan ethnic groups tended to vote, as I said, relative to ethnic lines. Now, let me turn to the single non-transferable vote. And this is a major problem, as most of you probably know. And I'm going to present you some statistics that are absolutely mind-blowing from my perspective. I only have time to discuss the implications of the single non-transferable vote for the 2010 Walsi-Jirga election, but my publications have also analyzed the 2005 election. And I'm only going to initially focus on Afghanistan's largest province, Kabul. My analyses vividly demonstrate the severe problems associated with a single non-transferable vote. Now, listen to this carefully. In 2010, 664 candidates competed for 33 Walsi-Jirga seats available for the province of Kabul, and a total of 486,000 votes were cast in 2010. Haji Mohammed Mahakik, just like he did in 2005 Walsi-Jirga, the chairman of the People's Islamic United Party of Afghanistan and former vice president, received the most votes. And he received a total of 3.6% of the vote. 3.6% of the vote. That a mere 3.6% of the vote could represent the most popular candidate should be extremely disturbing and has serious implications for Afghan representative democracy. Overall, 21, and listen to this carefully, overall, 21 of the 33 candidates elected from Kabul to the Walsi-Jirga received less than 1% of the total vote. Less than 1% of the total vote. The Walsi-Jirga elections, as witnessed throughout the country, are also, let me skip that. An analysis of the 2005 and 2010 Walsi-Jirga elections suggests the aggregated voting of winning candidates nationwide at the provincial level received 35% of the votes cast. 65% of voting Afghans voted for losing candidates to the Afghan legislature. No other country I know in the world has voting patterns that are this disturbing. The breakdown of each province's winning candidate's percentage of vote is very problematic, as I suggested. In only 3 provinces across the 2 legislative elections, Uruzgan in 2005, 62% of the people voted for winning candidates. In 2005, actually 57% of the voted for winning candidates in Kabul, and in Balkh, 59% in 2010. Witness results where the aggregate winning candidates were greater than 80%. So my conclusions are pretty simple. This analysis clearly suggests, my analyses actually, and my publications clearly suggests that Afghan elections, as well as the entire Afghan electoral process, is fraught with deep structural problems that ultimately undermine both the credibility and the legitimacy of the Kabul regime. The International Crisis Group suggests that, and I quote, a prolonged crisis over Afghan elections is paralyzing government and weakening already fragile institutions, and stoke ethnic tensions and could drive disfranchised Afghans into the arms of the Taliban. Moreover, the continuing election crisis, as we vividly saw in the 2014 election, is already deepening an ongoing conflict between the Afghan executive and legislative branches. I'm presently doing the statistical analysis on the 2014 elections, but I'm not ready to present it yet. It is particularly problematic that many of the problems affecting the Afghan electoral system have long been known by Kabul, the UN, the U.S., yet nothing has been to resolve these problems or to promote election reform. Democracy is not a political system that is something distinctive in human DNA. This analysis clearly suggests that the legislative voting based on the single non-transferable vote continues to plague Afghanistan, and until you get rid of it, will continue to plague Afghanistan. The goal of any electoral process should be to ensure that a representative government can be formed, but in the case of Afghanistan, the SNTV is significantly hampering the development of representative institutions. In addition, the SNTV system clearly distorts multi-seat constituencies. The fact that almost all legislators continue to be elected with a fraction of the popular vote, many with less than 1% of the vote, presents a variety of problems. The mere fact that both the 2005 and 2010 Walsi Jirga elections witnessed winning candidates receiving only 35% of nationwide vote should upset all Afghans. It results in a group of parliamentarians who are seemingly not beholden to anyone but themselves. In the 2010 Kabul Walsi Jirga, the last representative, now remember, almost 500,000 votes were cast, was elected with 333 votes. This simple fact is that representatives may be virtually unknown by the majority of the population, and in the final analysis, the Afghan electoral system takes the power away from the people or constituents and puts it in the hand of non-transparent, personality-based politics. The SNTV, and I'm almost finished, the SNTV electoral process is a complicated process that can only work under ideal conditions, as suggested by the IGC. The absence, and I quote, the absence of disciplined political parties to carefully analyze prospects and to ensure that their votes are evenly distributed among candidates results more often than not in equitable political representation. As demonstrated by the initial Afghan presidential elections of 2004 and 2009 and the legislative elections, ethno-linguistic affinities remain extremely strong, and this is very problematic to me in a deeply ethnically fragmented country. The analysis presented here definitely suggests that Afghan ethnic groups not only vote along ethnic lines whenever possible, they also vote against people outside their affinity group. In the Afghanistan case, addressing ethnic divisions that seem to be so divisive is critical if any type of representative democracy is ever to be more than an illusion. Rather than endorse a procedural democracy that only highlights the completion of events such as elections, the Afghan government must seriously address the issues that divide citizenry. Until then, the Afghan electoral representative democracy will remain primarily a theatrical process with little substance. The challenge now facing the current Afghan government is the daunting task of uniting Afghan people while not repeating the mistakes of the past. And this all needs to be done in the context of massive corruption. Let me end by suggesting a couple of things that need to be done. The single non-transferable vote must be eliminated, or Walsi Jirga districts must be created. You can't have a person voting for just one of 33 candidates in their province. It has all kinds of implications for representation. Second, Afghanistan desperately needs, as my colleague early suggested, viable political parties, but viable political parties that are multi-ethnic, multinational, and active to serve Afghans, instead of serving the Afghans of particular ethnic groups. Finally, my analysis implicitly raises the issue of the relevance of a strong presidential system in Afghanistan versus a more federally regional type of government. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Tom. I think you really brought out the problems of SNTV. But of course, if you don't allow political parties to contest elections, and if you don't have electoral districts in which to organize yourselves in, you will remain weak political parties. They obviously are two sides of the same coin. Our last speaker, last panelist, Mr. James Armstrong, the political advisor to NATO's senior political representative. James.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for persevering. I know it's been a long day. I'd like to think your presence here is an indication of your support for NATO's presence in Afghanistan. I'm sure that's the case. So I want to start, I'm going to be talking today about political reform in the Afghan security sector, but I want to start by talking about what our office does, because I think that's important for framing my future remarks. So the NATO Senior Civilian Representative is the political arm of NATO, and it's important to understand that NATO is a political military alliance. So NATO has political objectives as well as military objectives. As the SCR, he functions in a role very similar to our ambassador. So he engages with the Afghan government, he engages with the international community representatives here to carry forward the political goals of NATO. So what are these goals? Well, the primary goal of NATO hasn't changed since 2001 in Afghanistan. The goal is to support a stable democratic government that will not become a safe haven for international terrorism. So the goal has stayed the same, but the mission has changed over time. Up to 2014, NATO was here under the International Security Assistance Force mandate. So that meant that we were providing direct security support to the Afghan government. We were essentially involved in direct combat, and a number of allied young men and women sacrificed their lives in order to give the Afghan security forces the time to develop in order for them to be able to take the fight to the insurgency. So as I say, in 2014, the International Security Assistance Force was disbanded and the Resolute Support Mission was established. And the Resolute Support Mission has been established to provide training, assistance, and advice to the Afghan security forces. So it's very important to understand that we're no longer in a combat role in Afghanistan. The Afghan National Security Forces have responsibility for protecting the Afghan citizens, and we are in a supporting function to that. And it's also important to understand that in light of the US South Asia announcement in August, that role hasn't changed. Our mission has not changed here. And there are no plans for it to change. So again, we are not involved in direct combat. We are providing security assistance support to the Afghan government. The size also is not the size of the mission is also not intended to change. You may have heard reports about the deployment of extra security forces by the US and by NATO allied governments, but in terms of NATO, these extra forces are intended to fill gaps in the mission that were already present. So the size of the mission as it was originally envisioned has not changed. So I'm going to talk today about our role in providing support to the security sector. And it's important to understand that our presence here is not an open-ended commitment. While we are very pleased to continue to provide support to the Afghan government, we expect the Afghan government to act as an effective partner in partnering us in reforming and developing an effective and sustainable security force. And I think we've seen positive developments in the Afghan government's support for our mission since 2014. The most positive commitment the Afghan government has made has been the establishment of the security roadmap. The government has established its roadmap, and the roadmap basically provides benchmarks for the government to aim for in key areas in security force reform, such as leadership development, countering corruption, improving fighting capabilities, and command and control. And I want to talk a little bit about the achievements and the challenges that remain in a couple of these areas. In terms of leadership development, we've seen a number of achievements and positive indicators under the Ghani government. In the last year, 5 of the 6 Army Corps commanders have been replaced. And we've also seen the amendment of the inherent law, which governs the retirement age of senior military officials. These changes, we believe, will bring a new generation of Afghan leaders into senior military positions by 2020. We've also seen positive indications of leadership development in the Ministry of Interior, with 13 senior leaders replaced at the start of 2017. We understand that these leadership changes have not been easy. They required a great deal of political courage on the part of the Afghan government. There have been long-standing political rivalries and patronage networks within senior Afghan security leadership positions. These rivalries and patronage networks have exacerbated divisions in the AISS and continue to an extent to undermine operational efficiency. We call for the Afghan government to take further steps in establishing a meritocratic force in which we have the best men and women in positions of leadership in the Afghan security forces. Looking at corruption now, corruption has been a huge issue in the AISS. We recognize that, and we support the steps the Afghan government has taken to challenge this corruption. We've seen very positive indicators here. The establishment of the Major Crimes Task Force and the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Centre in the last year has enabled the Afghan government to investigate and prosecute senior officials engaged in corruption. We've seen 13 individuals from the ministry, senior individuals from the Ministry of Defence prosecuted this year, and we've seen 1 individual from the Ministry of Interior. But again, we call for the Afghan government to take further steps in challenging corruption within the Afghan security forces. Much more work is needed to ensure that the security sector is not delegitimized in the eyes of the Afghan people and the international community. We know that corruption extends all the way up and down the Afghan security forces, from extortion to at the local level to the misuse of supplies at the leadership level. This is a key issue where we expect and support reform. We also support the implementation of a number of UN Security Council resolutions, 1325 and 1612, which aim primarily at increasing the participation of women and incorporating gender perspectives within the Afghan government. And we work with the Afghan security forces to ensure that they look at gender equality when making appointments to senior positions. The Afghan government has taken steps to implement UN Security Council Resolution 1325 by implementing an action plan. However, significant cultural and structural barriers remain. We call on the senior leaders in the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of Interior to take the leadership to appoint the best women and men to senior positions in the Afghan security forces. On Security Council Resolution 1612, which is a commitment to child protection, this is also a key priority for us in our engagement with the Afghan security forces. Although anti-government and insurgent forces continue to cause a majority of child casualties, the failure of any actor in this conflict to take all possible steps to avoid such casualties is unacceptable. In our daily work with the Afghan security sector, we insist that these steps are taken to avoid child casualties. So I'd like to reiterate that NATO's support to the Afghan security sector is not just aimed at improving the fighting capabilities of the Afghan security forces. We are not just here providing technical support, we are providing political support to the Afghan government to make the reforms necessary to enhance the Afghan security forces' legitimacy in the eyes of the Afghan population. A security force that is corrupt, a security force that is ethnically divided, a security force that does not uphold the rule of law, cannot be sustainable in the long term and will legitimize the insurgency in the eyes of the population. So NATO, as I say, is on a daily basis engaging the security sector in order to tackle the challenges that I've talked about: corruption, leadership, patronage networks. We have advisors working at the senior ministerial level who promote effective rule of law within the security sector aimed at reducing corruption and improving civilian governance. I'd like to also finally end by highlighting that NATO's support to the security sector does not equal or equate to our reliance on a military solution. We've talked a lot about reconciliation today, and NATO wholeheartedly supports efforts to undertake a political resolution to the conflict. We recognize that a political resolution is currently the only feasible, sustainable solution. In addition to undertaking the reform of the security sector, we expect the government to make substantive efforts towards reconciliation. But we also recognize that any reconciliation process requires partners willing to engage in good faith. The Taliban must signal this good faith by commitment to abandon links to international terrorist groups. The international community cannot countenance Afghanistan becoming a safe haven for groups such as the Islamic State, which threaten the security of the international community and especially the stability of regional actors. The inaugural meeting of the Kabul process and news that the secondary meeting of the Kabul process will occur in January 2018 is a very strong signal of the government's commitment to reconciliation. We urge the government to take advantage of the momentum generated by the US South Asia strategy announcement to make further progress in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. I'm glad to see one hand quickly up. And the second hand, I'll come. I'm so impressed with the enthusiasm of our audience today. Despite being the end of the day, we have. So I see one hand right at the back there on my right. Chris Fair is there, and I'll come to you. I'll come to you. Can we give that? Because before I could say his hand was up right at the back. The last, there, right at the back. With the tie and the light blue shirt. Because from here I can't see anything. Let's have quick, our panelists have been very pointed. Let's have quick pointed questions. Long articles, reviews can be discussed, philosophical points can be discussed over chai.
بسیار تشکر. ما گفتنی‌های بیشتر دارم اما متاسفانه وقت اجازه نمیده. ای کاش فرصت می بود تا که ما هم نقطه نظرات خودش شامل همی بحث مهم می ساختیم و بالاخره به یک راهنمود تبدیل می شد. در نخست جا داره از دکتر صاحب تشکری کنم به اینکه بعد از 16 سال با کلیگویی ها نگفته شد زمینه بحث اکادمیک برای دولت سازی فراهم شد تا اینکه ما ریشه یابی کنیم و دقت بیشتر داشته باشیم و بالاخره بتونیم با یک دولت مشروع با ظرفیت برسیم. مسئله دوم امیدوار هستم که بحث دو روزه یک راهنمود باشه برای دولت سازی افغانستان تا اینکه ما به گذشته ها برنگردیم و حداقل با گذشته هر روز بتونیم پیشرفت کنیم و مشروعیت هم بیشتر شود. دو سوال داشتم، فقط یک تبصره کوتاه. سوال اولی می است از دوستان که
You should have asked a question till now. That's the whole point. We are running out of time. Let's just ask questions.
سوال اول این است که از به باور شما افغانستان در کدام مرحله دولت سازی قرار داره؟ با در نظر داشته مشروعیت و ظرفیت و سلطه‌جویی. سوال دوم است که به باور شما چه نوع اصلاحات انتخاباتی باید تحقق پیدا کنه تا اینکه ما انتخابات بینون یگانه بیز و اساس دولت سازی مشروع با ظرفیت و سلطه‌جو داشته باشیم. اما تفسیر کوتاه می است که در کنار از اینکه دوست ما در مورد SNTV صحبت کردن، سیستم رای واحد غیر قابل انتقال که یک چالش بوده بدون شک نتونست احزاب سیاسی رو در افغانستان رشد بده، اما چالش های دیگه اساسی بوده که ما متاسفانه روند دولت سازی در افغانستان از زمانی که یادم و مطالعه کردیم یا تحمیلی بوده و یا مصلحتی. روند تحمیلی و مصلحتی باعث شده که ما اونمو روند مکمل مراحلش طی نکنیم و به یک دولت مشروع با ظرفیت نرسیم. بنابراین چالش اصلی از اینجا شروع میشه که ما نتونستیم با او برسیم. مسئله دیگه ساختارهای سیاسی و سیاست‌های یک بار مصرف یکی از چالش‌های دیگه بوده که سیاست‌ها و ساختارهای سیاسی یک بار مصرف باعث شده که ما نتونیم واقعا همون زیبایی که در دموکراسی میتونه تضمین شود و انتخابات خوب تمرین کنه در نظام باعث شده که ما نرسیم به دولت سازی که نیاز داریم. بحث مهم دیگه فساد سیاسی. اصلا توجه به فساد سیاسی نداره. خب گپ آخری که همیشه حکومت‌ها یا دولت‌ها متمرکز بوده. این یک توازن ایجاد نشده بین مرکز، حکومت مرکزی و حکومتی که در سطح ولایت و محلی هست. تشکر.
تشکر. Chris Fair, please, right there. I'll come. We'll take the three people here and then come back on this side. Three are next to each other. Chris, lady in front, Paolo. There. There. Christine Fair.
All right, I've got a question for the NATO fellow.
No.
I don't even know where to begin. So you don't even have to change your talking points. All you do is change the date. And we just substitute out you with another person. This has been a test of NATO, and NATO has failed. What I would like to hear, instead of these preposterous Prometic formulae where you guys basically say the same stuff every single time, is an admission of everything that NATO has done is absolutely wrong for this country. And it ties in to the voting system that's here. For example, you don't know how to fix this country. You just don't. The systems that you build don't work here. You allotted countries responsibilities for particular ministries without putting into place lateral cohesion. How can you do security sector reform for the Army if you have a completely discombobulated Ministry of Interior reform? And by the way, these reforms that you do are ridiculous. Police reform has just been hosing off corrupt police and then putting back into their job. So I'd like to see some actual thinking about what you all are actually doing, what you actually have done. But most importantly, what you didn't mention is economic sustainability for this country. NATO, with the U.S. as a lead, insisted upon building the biggest rentier state that this country has ever seen. It can't pay for its recurring costs. If it weren't for the American taxpayer paying this bills, this entire thing falls. And all you have to do is look at Najibullah. He hung on when the last soldier crossed the Amu Darya, but he fell when the last Soviet government couldn't write a check. So could you please get real and tell me what the hell you guys can do differently? That is my point.
You made your point. Lovely.
Thank you.
Right in front, and then analysis.
Sadiq Amini, I'm a student of political science. A great panel. Considering what Professor Thomas mentioned on the research, 2004 and 2010 election, I'm looking forward to the 2014 because they were, especially for the second round, given there were two camps and there were different groups, I would see how the trend changed. The question is for Dr. Sharan and Mr. Cocker, given the political networks that you mentioned, the national versus the local and their implication for the nation, and as Professor mentioned, how the people are voting in terms of their ethnic allegiances, how would you foresee the next election? As you mentioned, those are the solutions. How would you think that we will not end up with another 2014 election in 2019, or before that in parliament election? And for Dr. Sharan, what are you doing as Deputy Policy for IDLG to fix that? That these political networks are actually, these people are representing different groups and people, and the fact that they are able to manipulate these ethnic identities, meaning that they have people who are following their leadership style, they believe their leaders. What is the government's plan to make sure that these people are isolated, that they are no longer influential in the society? Thank you.
Right in front. Can you give the mic right in front? Yeah. Then we'll go to the two ladies here. And
Thank you very much. Just a telegraphic observation to the NATO representative. Taliban and ISIS are clearly distinguished. There are zones of overlappings, but it's a minor problem to keep them separate. Now the question is about Mr. Johnson and Mr. Kakak. What about? You see, we are thinking about if a possible peace process can go on, and we can make a sort of a framework agreement with the Taliban. That's something which we are thinking about, but it's certainly not yet immediate. The point is that what you think about the use of devolution, namely electing regional authorities, including a governor, is that something which is getting in a way to ease the problem that you were very interested in pointing out?
There were two questions from two ladies right there.
And if you have
gender equity, and a panel is
just if you have answer later on, I will be happy to listen to them even after today. Okay.
And I said the rest of it we can always have over dinner. There were two ladies there, and as I said, since our panel is so one-sided, I thought we must allow ladies.
عصر همه دوستا بخیر. اولا از جناب مرادیان صاحب قلبا سپاسگزاری میکنم که من امروز از این کنفرانس بسیار موضوعات فهمیدم و امیدوار هستم که کنفرانس بعدی برای رهبران و امیران جهادی و غیر جهادی که اینا هستند که افغانستان به طرف بحران و دشواری‌ها کشاندن و گفته آقای صفوی که به خاطر وفاق ملی اگر کار کنیم و اینطور یک کنفرانس که اونا متحد شون و افغانستان نجات بدن. سوال ما از آقای پروفسور توماسی است که شما در صحبت‌هایتان تمامش گفتن که دشواری هایی که امروز در افغانستان است و بحران مشروعیت و سلطه‌جویی و عدم ظرفیت و این موضوعات تمامش ابعاد داخلی را یاد کردن. مسئله انتخابات یاد کردن. ما در افغانستان که به این بحران قرار داریم ما دو بود است. یکی بود داخلی که شما اشاره کردین، بود دیگهش بود خارجی است. شما زمانی که در افغانستان بعد از 2001 آمدین او زمینه برای شما در قسمت امنیت مساعد بود. نفوذ شماری دقیق وضع امنیت در سراسر افغانستان خوب بود تا سالهای 2004. چرا شما نفوذ شماری را نکردین؟ اگر نفوذ شماری دقیق صورت می گرفت ما واقعا انتخابات خوب و سالم می داشتیم. واقعا مراکز رایدهی نفوذش مشخص می بود، نوای نفوذش مشخص می بود، لیست رایدهندگان کاملا مشخص می بود که متاسفانه این کار شما ناظر بودند در وقت این کار با ما نکردین و در این انتخابات پرچالش یکی از دلایل شما هم دخیل هستین. شما من عیس یک استاد پانتون بیاین گفتی و خواهد که گفتنی را بکنید. موضوع دوم ما که سوال ما از معاون صاحب ارگان‌های محل و آقای رحیمی اینا لطفاً در این کنفرانس اینا حضور دارن، محافظه کاری نکنن و آقای کاکر صاحب هم گفتن که نواقص قانون اساسی رو گفتن. درست است که ما در قانون اساسی فعلی خود کمی و کاستی داریم، اما اگر امی قانون اساسی فعلی ما تطبیق شود ما میریم به طرف ملت سازی. در اونجا توازن تعصب و تعبیز کاملا رد کرده، یعنی مشکلات وجود نداره. اگر امی تطبیق شود چرا ما به نام ریاست اجرایی در قانون اساسی نداریم چیزه، اما مشکل و چالش که به وجود آورد همونطور که دوستا از جانکیری اشاره کردن ما تفاهم سیاسی برای ما قابل قدر است یا قانون اساسی بنعکس قانون مادر برای ما قابل قدر است. همه مردم بعد از ما قانون اساسی خود بعد از قرآن کریم احترام داریم. قانون اساسی ما زیر پا شده به جایش تفاهم نامه سیاسی که عالم روی جرگه از قانون اساسی مال میگن که به این شرایط اگر ما امروز پارلمان اعضای پارلمان غیر قانونی به این چوکی‌ها شدن دلیلش همین است که حکومت قانون رو تطبیق نکرده و نرفتیم به طرف انتخابات. دلایلش لطفاً آقای شما هم بگوین چرا قانون جزا رو تطبیق نمیکنین؟ ما والی‌هایی داریم، شما از بعض شبکه‌ها یاد کردین. اگر قانون جزا تطبیق شه ما هیچ مشکلی نداریم، قانون داریم. عدم تطبیق قانون باعث شده که ما بریم به طرف دشواری‌هایی که در افغانستان از سلطه‌جویی‌ها را کسانی میکنن که قانون زیر پای میکنن. ما امیدوار هستیم که کنفرانس‌های بعدی برای اینم تو افرادی که قانون زیر پا میکنن ما در این قانون اساسی خود مشکل نداریم. لطفاً وضاحت بدید.
Tajakur, let's have the jawab now and then because we are running out of time. Let's at least have some jawab. So let us start.
به نام خدا. مریم هستم از اعضای جامعه مدنی ولایت هرات. سوال ما متوجه آقای جیمز نماینده ارشد سیاسی ناتو است. با توجه به که آقای جیمز فرمودن اهداف اینا هنوز تغییر نکرده و طوری که ما زنان در افغانستان نیو پیکر جامعه افغانی را تشکیل میده و تا به حال به این باور نرسیدیم که سهم و نقش زنان چرا هنوز به شکل سمبولیک است. به اون از چیزی که شما میخواین و اهدافی که شما دارین و گپایی که شما میزنین هنوز به مرحله عمل نرسیده و تا به کی ما انتظار بکشیم؟ ما زنهای افغانستان اگر وکیل هست، اگر در ارگانهای دولتی کار میکنه، اگر در مراجع انجویی و این بحثا کار میکنه، همیشه نقش زنها سمبولیک بوده و روی این هدف شما چقدر تمرکز داریم و مسئله قطعنامه 1325 و پلان عمل ملی یاد کردین و چقدر شما باور دارین که توانستین تا امروز تا همین لحظه که من امروز شما گپ میزنم توانستین پلان عمل ملی را در سطح افغانستان حداقل در 5 ولایت بتانستین اون را معرفی بکنین و بشناسونین و همین سهم و نقش زنان به شکل کلیدی از او به شکل بنیادی از او.
Out of time, can we get some jawab from our panelists? Let's start quickly. We are already over time, so I've been asked to end it. So let's just take 40 seconds, 45 seconds. 40 seconds? Yeah. Actually, a lot can be said in 40 seconds.
صادر داریم. من در قدم اول با یافته‌های آقای پروفسور تامس جانسون بیشتر از خودشون توافق دارم. واقعا یکی از دشواری‌های جدی افغانستان هست و به دلایلی که نمیشه در اینجا به او پرداخت از عملی شدن اصلاحات بنیادی در انتخابات، در قانون انتخابات، در برگزاری انتخابات متاسفانه تا هنوز صحبت میکنیم جلوگیری شده. با بحثی که آقای کاکر ارائه کردن مخالف است. من در بحث دکترایم یک عنوان فرعی دارم به نام State Beneficiaries. یک مجموعه های هم دولت افغانستان از سال 1960 به بعد انتخاب کرده، بیرون روان کرده. بیشترشان هم به دانشگاه بیرود رفتن درس خوندن که از جمله آقای خلیلزاد، آقای غنی، آقای جلالی و قبلگاهشان هم هستن. اینا وظیفه‌شون بوده که روایت رسمی قدرت را در افغانستان به زبان انگلیسی تقویت بکنن. روایتی که ایشان مطرح کردن روایتی است که جریان تحول و تداوم در انتخابات مطرح کردن و حالا هم جریان هایی که طرفدار انحصار قدرت در افغانستان هستند از این افکار حمایت میکنن و الا از نگاه علمی ما برایشان میخوایم بگوییم که دلایل و شواهد قانع کننده وجود داره که یک نظام دموکراتیک، یک نظام پارلمانی برای یک دموکراسی و رشد دموکراسی به مراتب بهتر از یک نظام ریاستی انحصاری است که هم از نمونه امریکا در افغانستان نسخه برداری شده با حذف فدرالی و غیر متمرکز بودن قدرت. در این مورد میگن یک گریت دیبیت شکل گرفته، اسناد و دلایل زیادی وجود داره. اگر افغانستان یک جامعه همگون می بود ما مشکلی نداشتیم. نوعیت نظام کدام تفاوت نمیکنه، ولی در یک جامعه چند قومی یک نظام ریاستی انحصاری با یک برنده و چندین بازنده فاجعه است. در یک جامعه بعد از جنگ ما نیازمند بالا بردن میزان برنده هستیم در یک ساختار سیاسی. به همون اساس من در کتابم از دیزاین یا طراحی قانون اساسی برای ایجاد یک نظام یاد کردم که بتونه برنده ها را تعدادشان در این ساختار بالا ببره. یکی از کسایی که فدرال خواه و غیر متمرکز خواه بود آقای جنرال دوستون بود. بالاخره بر دفاع از نظام متمرکز رای داد. ما امیدوار هستیم یک درسی گرفته باشه که دیگه فراموش نکنه. همین نظام متمرکز و همین قدرت برای رئیس جمهور فعلا نشان را تبعیدی ساخته به ترکیه و برای تعداد دیگه همین درس داده. در افغانستان ما نیازمند ساختاری هستیم که زمینه شکلگیری ائتلاف‌های کلان را فراهم بکنه و کلگی خود در قدرت ببینن. هیچ کس و هیچ گروهی نتونه که علیه یک جریان دیگه در افغانستان تصمیم بگیره. حالا متاسفانه من سخنگوی حکومت هم هستم، وقتی حرف میزنم تفکیک نمیشه بین حرفی که من میگم به عنوان یک محقق و پژوهشگر و موقف رسمی و الا حرفایی هست که من میتونم بسیار به صراحت بگم. فعلا حکومت افغانستان وزرای محترم هم اینجا حضور دارن، والی صاحبان و مسئولین هم به خاطر انحصار قدرت در یک بنبست قرار داره. یک نفر صلاحیت داره تعیین بکنه. ما پیشنهاد مقرری رو به یک ارگان روان میکنیم، اونا تصمیم میگیرن که کی مقرر شه، کی نشه و کی باشه و کی نباشه. اون نظام شبکه‌ای رو که آقای شاران برش ارائه کردن در این ساختاری که قدرت هم در انحصاری باشه بسیار به صورت جدی متاسفانه کار میده. به اون اساس من امیدوار هستم که این دیدگاه‌های متفاوت ارائه شود. یک دیسکورس و یک گفتمان همیست که اینا ارائه کردن در جریان انتخابات هم مطرح شد. ما که برنده قطعی انتخابات بودیم، از یک نظام غیر متمرکز پارلمانی حمایت کردیم، والی‌های انتخابی، ولسوال‌های انتخابی، اصلاح قانون اساسی افغانستان. همه استدلالی که ندارن احزاب نیست. خود شما اجازه ندارین احزاب شکل بگیره و به همین اساس هم بخواین که این فرضیه رو ادامه بدین. یک گپ هست که باید بهش توجه صورت بگیره در بخش سوال‌ها. من فکر میکنم که بیشتر سوال‌ها به دوستای دیگه ارتباط داشتن. یک موردی که خواهر ما بهش اشاره کردن که محافظه‌کاری نشه، واقعیت‌ها رو بگیم، اگر قانون اساسی کار میداد ما به بنبست نمی‌رفتیم. ما عملاً یک ساختار غیر متمرکز در افغانستان تجربه کردیم، هم در زمان آقای کرزی و هم فعلا. نظام غیر متمرکز است ولی قانون اساسی متمرکز داریم. یا به قانون اساسی عمل بکنیم، اگر جواب نمیده باید قانون اساسی رو تغییر بکنیم. شما نمیتونید در تناقض پیش برین. همین وضعیت در زمان آقای کرزی هم بود. شما والیا رو دیدین، بازیگرا رو دیدین و فعلا هم همین وجود داره. یعنی عملا قانون اساسی تعطیل است و کار نمیده، اما یک تعدادی به خاطر حفظ سلطه و هژمونی تاریخی و گذشتهشان میخواهند اون تحولی که در افغانستان آمده و ما به خاطر از اون مبارزه میکنیم که تغییر بیاد، تحول بیاد، بتونیم حق نمایندگی را، بتونیم حق مشارکت را تضمین بکنیم به اساس حقوق شهروندی، به اساس تساوی. جلوه زیری بگیرن، تلاش میکنن که این قدرت را در انحصار خود داشته باشن و این برای مشکلات افغانستان متاسفانه پاسخ نمیده. تشکر.
تشکر بسیار زیاد. عزیزاده سوال کردن که چه نوع دولت داریم. خب کریستین فر جواب از او داد. کریستین فر جواب از او داد که ما یک رنتیر استر داریم، دولت رنتیر که باز من نمیخوام در اون مورد چی؟ اجاره‌ای که در اون مورد صحبت کنم. میم در قسمت مسئله غیر متمرکز ساختن نظام سیاسی افغانستان که یک بحث بسیار جالب است. ما فعلا رویش کار کرده رایستیم. ما فعلا روی پالیسی حکومتداری محلی کار کرده رایستیم. یک پالیسی بسیار جامع است که بر ما زمینه را مساعد بسازد تا تدریجی بریم به طرف یک نظام غیر متمرکز در افغانستان. مسئله نمایندگی سیاسی را در افغانستان حل کنیم، مسئله مشارکت حل کنیم، مسئله تا اندازه جنگای یا منازعات محلی را ما بتانیم حل کنیم. آنچه در پنجوایی قندهار اتفاق میفته از نگاه نمایندگی سیاسی بر ما قابل قبول نیست. آنچه در ارزگان اتفاق میفته و بحث قبیله‌ای که در ارزگان تقریبا به سقوط شهر ترینکوت سال قبل انجامید، او باید اتفاق نیفته و او تو مسائل و منازعات قبیله‌ای و قومی نباید در سطح کابل بیاید. ما باید چگونه، سوالی که ما از خود میکنیم است که چگونه ما این منازعات حل کنیم، مسئله نمایندگی سیاسی را حل کنیم. متاسفانه در افغانستان وقتی ما صحبت از یک نظام غیر متمرکز میکنیم، اتومات احساس میکنیم گفتمان فدرالیسم میشه. ما به هیچ نوع این را پیشنهاد نمیکنیم در افغانستان. آنچه ما میخواهیم است که زیادتر صلاحیت به مردم داده شود که در انتخاب و مقرری ولسوال خود، والی خود، اعضای ولسی جرگه، نماینده های شوراهای ولایتی و شوراهای ولسوالی اگر انتخابات در قسمت باشه برشان حق رأی بدیم. ما در این باور هستیم که هر چیزی که ما معرفی میکنیم باید برگرفته از ساختارهای سیاسی اجتماعی افغانی باشه. نظام جرگه و جرگه شوراها در افغانستان جواب میتن. آیا امکان از این هست که ما صلاحیت به ملک بتیم هر 4 سال بعد بیایند در مرکز ولسوال خود انتخاب کنن، غیر مستقیم و مصارف کمتر بسازیم؟ آیا امکان از این وجود داره که هر 4 سال بعد یا 5 سال بعد ما جرگه در سطح ولایت داشته باشیم و در سطح ولایت نماینده های مردم قریه بیاین هر 5 سال بعد والی خود انتخاب کنن؟ این سوالایی است که ما روی ازنا کار میکنیم. اما چیزی که مهم است اینا سوالای سیاسی است. آیا ما آماده از این پروسه هستیم یا نه یک چیزی است که ما در موردش باید تأمل کنیم. آیا رئیس جمهور مملکت ما آماده از این هست که بعضی صلاحیت‌های خود به والیای ما بده، به ولسوالای ما بده؟ آیا زمانی از این هست که وزارت‌های ما بعضی صلاحیت‌های خود در قسمت بودجه سازی، در قسمت پلانگذاری به والیای ما بده؟ بحثایی است که ما سرشان کار کرده هستیم، مدل‌های مختلف مطالعه کرده هستیم که بتونیم به طرف یک نظام غیر متمرکز که در او صلاحیت بیشتر به والی ما بدیم، به ولسوال ما بدیم. تا دسامبر امسال پلان هست که می پالیسی از کابینه تصویب شود و بعد از اون ما بریم به طرف تطبیق از این. میایم در قسمت بحثی که Professor Thomas discussed it and introduced. I think that's a very interesting conversation to have. And I have looked at 2009 election, I have looked at 2010 parliamentary election, and I have looked at 2014 election. I've written 3 papers on those in terms of ethnic voting and so forth. Right. I haven't written in terms of the voting patterns. I haven't identified the voting patterns. But for me, what was most interesting was how elites in Afghanistan manipulated identities to get the constituency vote. And I think that's a very important conversation. And I don't know if Professor Thomas is looking at the district level. My suggestion is if you look at the district level patterns of voting and the issue of tribe and regional, politics becomes more important than ethnicity. And I think we need to be careful with this whole discourse of ethnicity, because اگر ما زیاد بحث قومی را مطرح کنیم در آخر روز ما صلاح یا مو وسیله را برای سیاستمدارهای محلی خود و برای سیاستمدارهای سنتی خود میتیم که به عنوان یک ابزار از استفاده کنه. به نظرم بحث قومی سیاست قومی یک بحث بسیار پیچیده است. در این مورد ما باید جدیتر رویش کار کنیم تا اینکه فقط زمان انتخابات ما بگیریم. آنچه که در 2009 اتفاق افتاد، بشردوست صاحب تقریبا 9% یا 11% رأی گرفت، اما اکثر از اون رأی از خاطر مسئله قومی نبود، مبارزه با فساد بود. یک کتله کلان در این مملکت باورمند به این است که از این گفتمان قومی ما براییم و هر چقدر ما دامن بزنیم گفتگان قومی و قالب تحلیل خود قومی بسازیم، همه قدر فرصت میتیم بر رهبرهای سنتی خود زمینه را فراهم میکنیم که از ما استفاده کنن و این ما هیچ وقت نباید بتیم. دید خود به مراتب از این کده وسعت‌تر بسنجیم. مگه خودم اینجا خلاصه میکنم، زیاد حرف زدم، دوستای دیگر سوالای دیگر جواب.
خب چون از تالارم سوالا بودن و همچنان آقای رحیمی صاحب یک چند اظهارات در مورد اظهارات ما داشتن دیگه، ما فکر کنم لازم باشه یک چند نقطه در اون مورد بگیم. اول فکر کنم که بحث را دو قطبی ساختن که انحصارگرا و یا دموکرات هستن یک طرفی طرف، فکر کنم که بسیار سالم نخواد بود، بخاطر که شما از اون باید عمیق‌تر بریم. چیزی که فهمی که ما خودم علوم سیاسی خواندم، پیش از حقوق و تاریخ خواندم، و اتمی سیستم خودش شما ببینیم او اهمیتی که ما شما فکر به اینجا دادیم به این اندازه اهمیت نداره با بسیار سیاستمدارا و خود پولیتیکال ساینتیست‌ها که ببینن. سیستم ریاستی در امریکا که از در ونزوئلا هم است، اما ونزوئلا را ببینن و امریکا را ببینن. سیستم پارلمانی در ایتالیا هم است و در انگلستان هم است و در اخیر در عراق هم است. شما حالت عراق ما شما ببینیم، حالت افغانستان رو ببینیم. فکر کنم ما underlying structural موضوعات را هم باید ببینیم. چیزایی که اینجا استاد در اون مورد بحث کردن، این موضوعات دیگه را و همچون چیزی که ما مطرح کردیم، چند برای یعنی سیستم حکومت چند کرایتریا ما باید داشته باشیم. یک تنها این لازم نیست که همگی مردم خود در اونجا ببینن. چی مانا؟ از نگاه قومی همگی مردم خود ببینن یا از نگاه کسای غریب و پولدار و از هر ولایت کسی هر کس خود ببینن؟ پس آیا این امکان داره؟ چرا یک طرح قومی باشه؟ اما چرا شاید یک نفر قومی امون نمایندگی که یک کسی که در قوم از شهر است و نمو یک کسی از دهات نمو نمایندگی را کرده نتونه. این بحثی بسیار عمیق‌تر میخوایم. ما فکر کنیم یک تناوی رو بگیم که هر کس رو ببینه اما کی مانا داره. این یعنی گفتیم بحث دیگه زیادتر اما بازم میخوایم تاکید کنیم این رو باید دو قطبی نکنیم. موضوعات است. ما براتون بگیم پدر ما حسن کاکر او طرفدار یک دوال سیستم بود. میگفت که باید یک سیستم باید یک چی باشه به اصطلاح ما شما دیگه بخار داره که بخار زیاد میشه باید یک سیستم باشه که بتونن که یک تغییر به بدون از اینکه به انتخابات بریم دیگه بریم به خاطر که ما مصرفش نداریم ما امکاناتش نداریم چیزا رو نداریم. این سیستم ریاستی یعنی مشکلات یعنی در بین اقوام و بین انحصارگرا و یا بین دموکرات ها هم نظریات بسیار مختلف است. پس من فکر میکنم این دو قطبی کردن لازم نیست و مخصوصا در یک کنفرانس بسیار علمی. در مورد چیزهای بسیار مهم دیگه که صحبت شدن خب درباره انتخابات فکر کنم چند I'll take just a few of these questions. Number one, what Mr. Professor, I've also studied the voting patterns. I think you have the data, but I think some of your statements were perhaps a little bit overblown. Let me point to it. You mentioned, for example, Karzai in first election he had 54% votes. Right. Qanuni has 16%. Is that representation of the ethnic breakdown? I don't think so. Number two, even in the last elections, I'll jump to it because we'll have more discussions later perhaps. Even in the last elections, I think in the presidential elections, I mean, Dr. Abdullah, he took a lot of votes from the south, from many different areas. Similarly, I think, I think in the presidential election, it's, yes, there are strong patterns, but it's not just, I think we cannot just say that people just vote for their ethnicity. I think that's, number two, when it comes to the local elections and parliamentary elections, frankly, yes, that's a lot more ethnic there, but that's also closer to the people. I think, frankly, if you even look at the local elections in Wyoming and somewhere else, I think we may find some similar patterns based on basically the People's Association and so forth. So it's a bit of a, but I agree with the conclusion. I think SNTV should be changed. SNTV should be changed. What should it be changed to? That's the harder question. Something that I advocated that actually should be smaller constituencies. I think that's what you were suggesting as well. But let's be also very practical. That has a lot of different issues as well, which is boundaries issues, populations. There are a lot of difficulties. Again, as the Afghan government, Afghan state, with all the international assistance, with all the challenges it's facing, security and otherwise, able to do all that. So I think it's just, there are difficulties in this. I think so this ties to the question Mr. Amini asked, whether the next election. Unfortunately, I'm not so confident the next election will be much better. I don't think, I must just say, I'll just point to two things. I was a member of the Electoral Reform Commission, and I think one of the reasons at the end I resigned before this, because there were a couple of major disagreements we had. Number one, elections and election commissions had lost their credibility. How do we build the credibility? What we looked at, there are two models for that, representative model and wise man or woman's model. Afghanistan, unfortunately, and now we're seeing the result. They applied the same process, had, 9 members, kind of from different ethnic groups, young people. If anybody applies to be a member of the election commission, that should be rejected, frankly. Serving in the election commission should be an honorary job. People who have basically done everything else in their lives, and they can serve the election commission. That is, people who have high degree of credibility. They have no more need for, let's say, cannot be pressured for money, cannot be incentivized to be a minister or something else. That's how we can build credibility of the election commission. Unfortunately, very young people, no matter how much you interview them, and they apply for you and they go lobby for that position, the same process was applied. Wrong. And now actually we're seeing the calls for removal of these folks, and that's very unfortunate. The others, I don't want to take, there were some suggestions, ideas that were hopefully, they were talking about like voter lists and so forth. But I think overall we have not yet heard how are they going to conduct the next election. So let's basically hold our judgments until we know all the facts. But unfortunately, the developments of the last couple of years do not give us too much confidence. For you, devolution of power, I think that's what we argued in our paper, and I think here bordered by much bigger neighbors. I think there's the issue of, but I think as far as the key question is whether the governors and provincial authorities should have more authority. That's yes. How that should be done, I think it requires kind of review and kind of assessment. But I think election of governors bordered by much bigger neighbors. I think there's the issue of, but I think as far as the key question is whether the governors and provincial authorities should have more authority. That's yes. How that should be done, I think it requires kind of review and kind of assessment. But I think election of governors, for example, with the current status where you have so much foreign interference, neighboring interference, could pose a lot of issues. I don't think I can take all the questions. Oh, one key question about the political parties. Oh, on the issues, I think this ties to Dr. Sif's issue as well. Parliamentary system, I'll be in favor of that. I think I'll be very happy one day if Afghanistan has a parliamentary system. But what's the building block of a parliamentary system? Political parties. Now, do we all agree that we don't have credible national political parties? I mean, in general, I know there are some political parties that have much stronger national base than others, but in general, they will say that actually that it does not have. We do not have those national political parties. In fact, we should have 2 or 3 political parties nationally, and then we can have a parliamentary system. So if we don't have, and why we don't have it, I think the issue of that they should be just incentivized through electoral law, basically give them seats in the parliament, that itself is not enough. Don't we have the right to ask the political parties to act responsibly? Don't we have the right to ask them to actually hold elections internally? Are these political parties not like, hereditary, and are they really committed to kind of the values of the Afghan constitution and so forth? Shouldn't we ask them to kind of behave and be representative and reach out to the people before they can be formally governed? I mean, but finally, do we see any political party in Afghanistan right now that can form a government, as currently is?
I've been asked now to wind up this session. There have been lots of points. I come from a country which has only 2,500 political parties. We have 60 parties in the Indian Parliament, 60. The ruling party has 282 MPs. The leading option is 44 MPs. In our first parliament, Congress had 300 seats. The next party had 12 seats. So I think we should be little less, and I always carry my Indian currency note, which has 100 rupees written in 17 languages. The point I'm trying to just make is, if you are comfortable with multiple identities, and the more the Indian state has allowed linguistic identity and other identities to flourish, the greater is the feeling of Indianness. It doesn't lessen it. I wanted to, but Tom, you want to add a few words? Because I've been told that they're switching off the mics.
Can I have 2 minutes? Sorry.
I first came to Afghanistan in 1986. There's one country that I love more than Afghanistan, and that's my home country. I want Afghanistan to succeed. The ironic thing that I find in Afghanistan, that at the local level, Afghans have been following pure Greek democracy based on consensual votes for millennia. But I think that the United States actually made a mistake when we pushed certain governments. We tried to create a small Jeffersonian democracy in Afghanistan with an absurd political roadmap that came out of Bond. Americans are extremely arrogant, and they think that what works for us will work for you. So I agree that many of the problems have basically been American, and I could get into it, but I don't have the time. Relative to the census, why there hasn't been a census, the American taxpayer gave the Karzai government in 2004 $25 million to conduct a consensus. Karzai said no because he did not want the world to know that the Pashtuns only represented 42% of the population. That's my hypothesis. Clearly, you've got to get rid of this, the single non-transferable vote or create districts within provinces. You have to do that. I mean, the United Nations said of the Walsi-Jurg election in 2005 that it was the most complicated election in the history of the world. And you've never had it at the district level. You'll remember that the bond agreements, you were supposed to have had the presidential, the provincial, and the district elections all simultaneously. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it, especially in all of the non-secure areas. So, you know, I've written 15 memos to the State Department to try to pressure Kabul to take a look at the SNTV, because it's destroying your legislative process. I mean, if a person can get elected with 333 votes when they had almost 500,000 voters, it's mind-boggling. So, you know, I know my talk was pessimistic. I know that the data at the provincial level that I use isn't necessarily the best. I recognize there's many Pashtuns that voted for Kanuni and others. It's not a one-to-one relationship, but the correlations are there. They're very strong. And I'd be more than willing to share my papers and the research and talk more if anybody's interested.
So I need to just add one. Sorry.
My job as chairman is over. Now it's up to the panelists to keep talking to the audience.
Give us just...
No, I have nobody to give you. My orders are coming from there. I've been told it's over.
نه یک کلمه بسیار کوتاه می‌خوام صحبت بکنم. ببینید just one second. ببینید مشکلاتی را که ما گفتیم و بحثا را کنار کردن به این معنی است که واقعیت‌های جامعه ما همین رقم است. ما در حال گذار هستیم اگر واقعیت‌ها را به رسمیت نشناسیم، نپذیریم، به این معنی است که زمینه عبور از مشکلات فراهم نمیشه. بحث فعلا کاندیدای ریاست جمهوری وقتی که از یک قوم میشه معاون اول دوستش از یک قوم دیگه است. تعیینات بر اساس قومی صورت میگیره و بحثی که آقای شاران هم مطرح کردن، یعنی قدرت باید متمرکز حفظ شود اما اداره غیر متمرکز شود. در صورتی که ما شورای ولسوالی را داریم، شورای ولایتی را داریم، اینا چی میکنن؟ یک موضوع آخری را که میگم ما در هتل ارک میباشیم، دانشگاه هرات برای پهلویش است، هنوز لوحه نداره. این نشان میده که چقدر ما برای تنوع بر رسمیت شناختن همون پولی را که ایشان از جیبشان کشیدن به کشور اهمیت قائل هستیم. اینا مشکلاتی است که باید بهش توجه بکنیم و عبور بکنیم از این مشکلات. وقتی که شما مشکلات را نگویین، شناسایی نکنین با هر قباحتی که داره، زمینه عبور از مشکل متاسفانه فراهم نمیشه. بسیار تشکر.
Ladies, oh yes, absolutely. I've seen your hands up from a long time. Go ahead. Can you please pass a mic? Please, 5 more minutes.
I would like our colleague from SCR to answer the question on NATO. I'm looking very much forward to this.
I've actually asked James to answer the question, but then he said he can do it on the site. But please, this is a request from the ambassador.
Okay, I don't want to hold anyone up for dinner. So on Professor Fair's question, she made a number of interesting statements. I think, I'm sorry if it's a cop-out, but I think I'd reiterate that NATO is really, our sole mandate is to provide support to the security sector. So we are part of the international community effort here, but we rely on the Afghan government and the international community to support comprehensive reforms across the Afghan government. A lot of the issues that you brought up are already issues that are beyond NATO's capability to influence. We rely on the international community and the Afghan government to work as our partners in introducing many of the reforms that I think you were talking about. So, but I'm happy to discuss offline as well. On the point about ISIS, just quickly, sir, I respect your point, and I wasn't intending to conflate ISIS and the Taliban. What I was suggesting that is an insecure environment and an unstable state is a very permissive environment to provide safe havens for international groups like ISIS. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Please stay. We're going to take a group photo before you leave for your dinner. And I would like to thank you, the panelists and the moderator and everybody. Indeed, it was interesting. I learned a lot. And one thing I noticed that women's voices are louder than men. So there you go, because I can hear myself louder. So.
Request to the organizers, please don't have 5 speakers on one panel.